This is the trial. Oh, Quintus
And Marcius.
and Marcius for the murder of.
It is indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah? Really? Fantastic. Amazing. Who knew? Hortensius! How do you do? I do not believe you yet had the pleasure of meeting my new bride, Tamara, Empress of Rome.
My noble lord Saturninus speaks highly of you, Hortensius. We trust that his trial can be concluded swiftly.
I'm grateful, my lady, for your kind praise, and can assure you that we shall have this matter disposed of by noon.
You shall make sure of it. My husband has suffered greatly, and I desire that these villainous curs grate this earth not a moment longer than is necessary.
The purpose of this exercise is still lost on me. You forget, Hortensius, that I was there, yes? It was I that found the murderous wretches caught them with beloved Bassanus' blood still fresh on their hands. Why can we not just leave them to rot?
It is Rome, my lord. Their guilt may well be unquestionable, but they must still be tried. Justice must be seen to be done.
Justice! Justice! I'll tell you of justice. My brother lies dead. The sons of Andronicus slew him. Justice! We shall devise an end worse than death, and then we shall have justice.
My lord, we must be patient. In a few hours it will be done, and you can dispense with them how you please. I must stress to you, however, the public need to see that they have granted their Roman rights. We must openly proceed in justice, show everyone how Rome stands tall among the civilizations of the world, even in the deepest hour of our grief. We must assure them that there is no scope in this realm for any measure of positive.
They are the scorn of old Andronicus. What if they cause a scene? Is it worth risking all just so we can play this ludicrous game?
I have heard from your jailer, man, that they have little chance and they won't be saying anything at all. We have made sure of that.
And they will have no advocate?
No man in Rome would dare defend them.
Are you sure, Marcus?
Hortensius is wise, but let's not forget his arrogance. Too arrogant to think anyone in Rome would dare oppose him.
The Emperor?
The Emperor. It's not the Emperor we need to be worried about. His new trull has utterly corrupted him. She holds all the power in Rome now.
Then surely she'll just refuse to let me speak.
Surprise them. They will not be expecting you. Choose your moment well, and Hortensius unwittingly becomes our ally. The Gothic queen may have no regard for the law and custom of Rome, but Hortensius has spent his life manipulating them. They have a right to a defense, and he knows it. He would not risk ruining his reputation by being seen to be as some corrupted man.
But everyone knows he's crooked.
Not so. Sure, he has defended a few suspect characters. Sure, he leeches onto those with power. But ultimately, he is popular. He has built his career in this forum. Saturninus has many enemies. Tamara even more so. Hortensius knows better than to back just one horse. Rome is not what it once was. The barbarians may not yet be at the gates, but one has found her way into the emperor's bed. She is poisoned by her tongue, and Rome too is this poison fed.
I shall take a season bide my time, but sire, you must know we cannot win.
I cannot risk the lives of my kin to fuel her bloody vendetta. I have chosen you, Cicero, because you are bold, you are brave, you are not afraid to speak the truth. Titus killed her eldest son. She has reason to hate him, and she will stop at nothing before he has fallen. Show this to the emperor. Cicero, sway these stone tribunes. Move these immutable men, and all Rome will sing your praise. Our fate, nay, the very fate of law, of order, of Rome rests in your hands. Do this.
Okay, all ready? Are the prisoners ready?
I believe so, my lord.
Then bring them in. Clerk, the indictment. Hurry.
Quintus and Marcius, wretched and vile sons of old Andronicus, thou art here accused and arraigned of high treason, in executing a most callous and grievous murder upon our noble lord Bassianus, son of our late and much beloved emperor and brother to our most gracious and sovereign lord Saturninus, contrary to the faith and allegiance of a true subject, that you did so with malice aforethought and in return for a bag of gold.
Hortensius, open your case. Their guilt is plain.
My lord, my lady, my dear friends, for over 20 years I have appeared in this forum. For over 20 years I have prosecuted some of the foulest traitors that the city has ever known. For over 20 years I have been charged with bringing these friends to justice. And yet in all of those years, and all of those hundreds of trials, never have I come across such an open and shut case as this. Never can this court have been so sure of a prisoner's guilt. Not sure, not only were they found with Bassianus' sacred blood on their filthy hands, not only they were discovered in that same hole where they had attempted to disguise his hopeless corpse, but the man who caught them in this most horrific act was none other than Caesar himself, our most excellent and honourable sovereign. They had committed this most grievous of crimes and then attempted to conceal it from the world. Of that, my lord, you know, as well as any, that there can be no doubt. So we must ask ourselves why. Why have they done this? Even on the point we can be perfectly clear. They were consumed by greed, offered a handsome reward if they would put an end to poor Bassianus' life. We've had the proof of this, but there is more. Bassianus was, as you all remember, no friend of Andronicus. He wished for their sister's hand in marriage, and they did not agree. They did not agree, and so, fueled by both the promise of riches and their desire to rip the sister from Bassianus' loving embrace, they took his life.
Yes, I think counsel has made his case perfectly clear. Can we be getting on?
Indeed, if it please the lady, I'd like to call my first witness.
Is this really necessary? Hortensius, I was there. I do not know why would someone else to tell us what we already know.
My lord, it would help the public perception of these proceedings if a witness were to tell everyone here the full story of what occurred. Someone needs to tell them. Please, sir, I beg that you trust in my judgment.
And who do you propose to call?
I call Aaron the Moor. Aaron, please tell the court how Moor became resident here.
I have been in the service of my lady for many years. Where she has gone, I have followed. And when old Titus decided to drag her into Rome, I dutifully followed, ever loyal to my lady.
You are loyal to the servant of our dear Emperor, and I presume now the gracious Emperor also.
I am.
And as a loyal and faithful subject, do you feel that you have the trust of our noble prince?
That is a message and a question you should address to my master.
Indeed he does.
And of course, any man who has the trust of Caesar has the trust of all of Rome.
Yes, get on with it, Hortensius.
Very good, my lord. On the day that this most vile act was perpetrated, would you please describe to the court of the events as you remember them?
It was the old general, Titus, who invited my lord out to a hunt. And I, like most of the court, attended upon my lord and lady, as did these two filthy barbarian sons of Titus.
And Prince Bassianus?
We left him and his lady Lavinia in a lodge to the northern edge of the forest.
You left him behind. When did you see him next?
Dead in the pit.
A pit.
It was a hunter's trap, I believe. I heard a cry, and believing it to be some sort of beast pursued it. I became detached from the hunting party, and pursuing these howls, found this pit.
And what did you do next?
And still believing it to be some sort of beast, I went to fetch my lord as is only proper. We arrived back but a few moments later.
And was it a beast?
Am I not a reasonable man? Do you jest with me? It was these two filthy Titus sons at the bottom of the pit, covered in blood. It was doubtless Bassianus' cries I heard as these two animals tore at his flesh.
What makes you
Titus himself found a letter detailing the murder.
Is this a letter that you refer?
Aye, in truth, as ebon as my complexion.
My lord, I think we committed an extravagant benefit.
Yes, do it.
And I quote, "And if we miss to meet him handsomely, sweet huntsman Basilius, tis we mean, do thou so much as dig the grave of him. Thou knowest our meaning. Look for thy reward among the nettles of the elder tree, which overshadows the bank of that same pit where we decreed to bury Basilius. Do this and purchase us thy lasting friends." And as if this was not proof enough of their guilt, do you not yourself find the reward to which the letter refers?
Yes, a bag of gold hidden precisely as promised.
Enough! Their guilt is plain, this trial is trying my patience. Hortensius, thank you, you have made your case most clear. I think everyone is now adequately
My
acquainted with the manner of my poor
My
brother's...
lord, I should like to ask some questions of the witness.
What? Some questions?
My lord, if it should please the court, I represent the two defendants in this matter.
What? You represent them? They are murderous traitors. They have no representation. Who is this clown?
Indeed, who are you, boy?
My name, my lord, is Marcus Tullius Cicero. My lord, I may not be as practiced in the law as my learned counterpart, but I am sure that in Rome, these men have a right to a defence against such crimes, even when they stand accused of the most heinous sins.
Oh, in Rome? Oh, perhaps you forget yourself, young fool. I am Rome! And in my city you cannot defend the indefensible.
God, Caesar has spoken. Remove this man. What gives you the right to question an emperor? You probably have not even one solitary drop of noble Roman blood, and yet you think yourself Caesar's equal.
Ma'am, I think no man in Rome, or indeed woman, to be equal of our beloved emperor. In this realm, my allegiance to him is second only to my allegiance to the gods. I am Caesar's true servant, as are the defendants, who honourably subserved both him and his father before him. You may not yet be familiar with the ways of Rome, my lady, but let me assure you, the day a man cannot even mount a defence to such a grievous charge is the day the ancient rights of every Roman citizen become just a worthless memory of an evidently bygone age.
Hortensius, what think you? You're uncharacteristically silent. Perhaps you've come to realise the hollowness of your assurances.
Tis, I admit, the most unexpected development. I do not believe I have ever crossed the paths with my evidently learned friend. But I cannot deny, my lord, that if the prisoners were to be sought to be represented, then it would be contrary to the long-established customs of Rome to deny that right.
Even, Hortensius, when their crime is so grievous and their guilt so evident.
My lord, I must conclude that the law of Rome demands it. I believe we have established the defendant's guilt beyond all possible doubt, so I cannot see why we would not allow them to defend. However, if the defence demands it...
And on whose authority are you charged to represent them? I was not aware the prisoners had any access to counsel.
A travesty indeed, my lord. I am here on the authority of Andronicus.
General Andronicus? Oh, it is a shame our old hero could
Nay,
be...
my lord. It was his brother, the tribune.
Well, the tribune! A true man of the people, yet I do not spot him here. I am persuaded to give you your chance, boy, but beware my patience is wearing very thin. And do not abuse it. You can see how it would be imprudent to make an enemy of me.
You are most gracious, my lord, and I would assure His Majesty that I never have any intention of making an enemy of him. Aaron, are you not in war?
Are you not a Roman?
I should take that as a yes, you are. Now, you say you have been in the service of your lady for a number of years. Did this include when she waged war on the armies of this realm?
Indeed, I have serviced my lady for many years, when she was Empress of the Goths and now as Empress of Rome.
So, in effect, you agree that you are none other than a slippery Moor who fraternises with the enemies of Rome. Are you religious, Moor?
And what does it matter?
Dear friends, do you not see? Romans, how can it place our trust in a man who months ago was waged in a war against our own people. A man who shares none of the values of Rome, has no respect for our customs, gives no credence to the truth and integrity of our institution.
Enough! He shares more of Rome than you could know.
My lord, can you not see? This witness has no credit. For years he did battle against the true sons of Rome. For years he slaughtered and maimed without a second thought. He has no God to restrain him, no allegiance to anyone but himself.
Are you deaf, counsel? Did you not hear him say how he has served me, is loyal to me? Do you say I should distrust someone who has served me for years on the advice of some unimportant upstart? They killed Prince Pausanias. We were there, and we saw it.
My lord, what I say is that you did not actually witness your noble brother's death. You only saw the epilogue, the unfortunate aftermath. You trust the rest to an irreligious Moor who has proven a greater enemy of Rome than these men have ever been.
Silence! Yes, I saw the guilt on their faces. I saw my innocent flesh mutilated by their swords. I saw his blood smeared across their tunics. And what of the damned letter? Yes? What of the dastardly reward? You presume they found themselves in a pit by mere chance?
By chance, my lord. None of this is by chance. What of the letter? If the letter was to these defendants addressed, then who sent it? Who wanted to see your brother dead? Who wanted to remove any potential threats to the throne? Of this we cannot be absolutely sure. So we must ask, who wanted to see these defendants punished for a crime they could not have committed? Or who wanted to see their father punished?
Oh, very good, very good. It's just one huge conspiracy, is it?
That's enough. You can dismiss your witness. And as for you, you forget how these men had hated my brother, how they were loath to see him take their sister's hand in marriage.
No, with due respect, my lord, it is you who forget. Forget how they loved your brother, had helped him, encouraged his relationship, how they had taken flight from your court to protect their sister and enable her to be with the man that she loved. Why would they do this only to then take his life?
Because they were consumed by greed. Enough! You have said your piece and you say nothing but lies and conjecture. Let you not speak another word, their guilt is clear.
My lord, it is not!
Guard!
If you proceed in this path, then you shall show all in Rome that no one is safe in her sanctuary. My lord, Rome is only worth the wealth of her ancient law and customs. You show that all goodness has taken flight from this earth. If the laws and customs of Rome will fall, then your empire is dead.
Oh, enough of this! Oh, we have listened more than perhaps was desired to both sides of the case. This matter is done to judgment. Quintus and Marcius, evil sons of Titus, you have been tried and found guilty of high treason and the murder of my brother Bassianus. To this end you are to be stripped, scourged, and taken through the Esquiline Gate to a dedicated place, whereupon 2 crosses shall be erected and your bodies nailed to them until death shall take you. And there you shall remain.
No! No, cost me not my son, good tribune, stay! Gentle thy hand, kind Saturnine. Strike not in air, my sons are not corrupt as thought. Hear me, great fathers. Noble tribune, stay! For pity of mine age, whose youth was spent in dangerous wars, whilst you securely slept. For all my blood in Rome's great quarrel shed. For all the frosty nights that I did watch. And for these bitter tears which now you see to fill the aged wrinkles of my cheeks. Reverend tribunes, gentle aged men, cost me not my sons! Cost me not my sons!
Right, want to get some chairs and
Approach the bench.
me, didn't you?
Oh, she's over there.
We might need to keep those as evidence.
I don't really mind. This one's braver because this one's got the medal to show his bravery.
Does anyone want any grapes?
Yeah.
He'll do one. Flat is, yeah. Bribe.
I started last time. Do you want to start this time?
Well done. Decadence and corruption. Very imaginative depiction of it right from the start. When we see Saturninus there being fed grapes by his servant, Tamara, the tiger wrapped in fur. How far, when you work on it, how far, or what elements of the corruption of the late Elizabethan legal system or political system were you trying to put across to us? I mean, what did you consider, you know, that when he wrote Titus around about 1593 or whatever it was, that possibly he was in the technique that he uses of referring back to another age of Roman Empire, how much was this an implicit criticism of the late Elizabethan political structure?
Well, I think in the text, incredibly, because they didn't actually have a trial in the text, for us it was an opportunity to explore that because we studied all the Thomas More trials, Anne Boleyn trials, the treason trials really, and this was just another way to sort of express how everything's pre-decided, everything is generally speaking to the script, and I mean that was our take.
I think, especially with reference to the late Elizabethan period, where you start to see again the sort of renaissance of the inquisitorial courts, the courts will start changing, the arbitrary courts that then move on and sort of progress into the Stuart period. These were political trials, they were show trials. And I think we tried to sort of reflect the sort of communist thing because it was a communist show trial in some respects. There was only ever going to be one outcome. The defence was just there to, well, it wasn't expected, but just to fill a void almost. He was never going to win. So I think there are certain reflections to that. I think we tried perhaps more so to reflect some of the earlier things, especially as Anka said, the trial of Thomas More, and we tried to have quite a few little cross-references to that in the play.
How fascinating that you introduced Cicero into. I've never seen Cicero performed as a character before. Of course, Cicero, in his writing, he makes it very clear that he thinks the role of the lawyer is that of the actor. He talks about, in Brutus, he talks about his lawyer going to the forum and making the audience stand and applaud.
I think here, the first thing we wanted to do was have fun. And it was to have fun. And it was fun to introduce these characters. Titus Andronicus is probably set in the sort of latter days of the Roman Empire, sort of 400 AD, and Cicero was 50 BC. But we tried very hard to incorporate some of the elements of both his character and Hortensius' character into it. So the corruption of Hortensius, very famous, especially the trial of Gaius Verus, and how he would latch on to those with power. Likewise, Cicero, how his sort of mainstay defence in a lot of trials was to simply discredit the testimony of the witnesses. It wasn't to go through point by point and pick apart the witness's testimony, it was just to simply discredit the witness. There are a number of trials where that happens, not so much in the treason trials, because obviously the treason trials they were decided by an assembly of the people, but before the formal courts, that's what he would very much try and do a lot of the time.
What does it say? What were you thinking about? And this is on the Ciceronian theme. The importance of rhetoric in the 16th century legal system. what were your thoughts on that when you were working on this?
That was at the back of our heads consistently throughout the entire. If you see the script, I mean, having watched it, we've got rolling speeches from Hortensius and from Cicero that seem to. I mean, they make a point, but they really, really embellish it. They just kind of go in circles and essentially try to win the audience over by strong words. And I mean, in the early modern period, we have Cook and lawyers like that who really place emphasis on rhetoric and rhetoric. And in the commonplace book, actually, that we did, what we found was that as lawyers in that day, the commonplace book was actually meant to be an arsenal for rhetoric weapons, basically. So pieces of literature, quotes, arguments that the lawyers would collect in these big books and then use that to employ it in the actual courts when they were actually in a trial. And that's the sort of approach we took. And obviously Cicero and in Rome, the whole idea of rhetorics was really, really kind of evident.
Did you find yourself using that process in writing this play? Returning to those commonplaces and assembling them as a part of your argument?
Yeah, I mean, through the script, we've got lots of references to the other plays we've done. We've got references to Winter's Tale, we've got reference to, obviously, Cicero, Hortensius, we've got, Barbarians at the Gate, random like, references all throughout it.
Pre-trial scene as well.
Yeah.
I think
Chris?
No, just the pre-trial scene were inserted just to sort of show how ridiculous it all was. And it was like in Merchant of Venice. And because I was sort of speaking with Hortensius as sort of like a friend as well.
Like when the Duke talks to Antonio and says how sorry he is that...
So we kind of like stressed the friendship between me and Hortensius just to sort of show how ridiculous it all was. And we weren't expecting Cicero anyway, part of the point.
Mm-hmm.
The dolls. How did you come up with that idea of Quintus and Marcius as mute?
I don't know. It sort of came to me.
Innocent.
I think.
Tell us a bit about it, because it's really interesting.
I think there are really 3 or 4 points. Number one, we didn't have enough actors. Quite simply.
Necessity.
And there was a necessity to it. We wanted it to be funny. We wanted it to be absurd slightly.
Absolutely. You picked up on that. I mean, I love this play for its that dark comedy and strange merging of the tragic with the ridiculously carry on.
I think thirdly, is, the child is almost this universal symbol of innocence. The young child, and of course they were innocent, and they were mute as well. They weren't going to have a defence. They were always going to be mute. And then we mutilated. Basically, to show how they had been treated by the Saturninus, how his system was, his system of government was creating this sort of void of justice. That he, in fact, he was almost worse than what they were accused of doing, because he just basically taken the torture down.
But it also felt as though they still had Bassianus's blood on their hands. That they became. There was this wonderful paradoxical, almost oxymoron of the innocence, but the bloodied innocence. And is this their brother-in-law's blood? Is this the blood of the husband of the sister that we were defending a moment ago? And the grotesquerie of that was kind of interestingly then slid sideways on the idea that maybe this is what Saturninus's court has been doing to these people in prison.
And as a parallel, actually, they kind of represent the mutilated body of the state that we talked about. I think in Measure for Measure, there's a lot of reference to cutting the state and the surgery of the body as the instrument of the law. And I guess the babies are a perfect representation of how corrupt the state is thanks to Saturninus.
Another issue I'd like to hear how you decided to address it is in the play is kind of one of the big themes in it is that the people don't have a voice. I mean, literally in the case of Lavinia, obviously after she's been mutilated, and the powers that be don't listen. How did you? Tell me how you thought about how you're going to represent that.
Well, I don't know if we did it properly, but I kind of had the idea that at the end, when Titus was speaking, and we were leaving, I just got up and left with Tamara, sort of glanced, looked at him, and then just sort of walked out. That was sort of the idea that Titus is this hero of Rome, and we're just completely ignoring whatever he has to say or think on the matter. So, like at the end, he was supposed to be isolated in the court, despairing, no one's listening. I mean, we've all left. He's basically powerless now, he's got nothing. And we've just sent his children to death. But basically, he was supposed to, isolation, I guess.
I think as well, with the defence, because we decided to introduce the defence partly to address that theme. The evidence against the defendants is actually damning. They've got some very strong evidence, but yet still the argument that I tried to make in my case was very much that it was an argument that actually would probably have had a degree of success before certainly Roman courts and early modern courts, because reflecting society's views of foreigners and barbarians and the inherent racism that was in it. And I think Aaron especially epitomises that, because he's not only a Moor, but he's a Moor who's basically been to war against Rome for the last decades. I also think I had a good argument, and that was just entirely disregarded by the courts.
Well, the place where I thought you were going to completely, because this was a trial that was full of surprises, and we were a little bit party to them because we heard that extraordinary speech of Marcus's trying to persuade you. So the original persuasion of the court was Marcus's trying to persuade you to act. But then Tamara had a really interesting line about something that had to do with more of that man has more to do with Rome than you can imagine. Was that your line?
Man shares
more in common.
And so I expected at that point, Cicero, of you to ask her to stand up and for her to reveal that she was pregnant and that you were going to go take down how much more of Rome did she have, and what was this relationship? Well, I was prepared for this trial because of the way you set it up and the way the arguments of persuasion went, and then the way you introduced the idea of the grotesque and the bizarre. I was prepared for this trial to go anyway, and then that there would have been a new baby born in the court, and that could have been the evidence that was completely exonerating of these two. So I'm sorry that they didn't give you more of a space to actually kind of perform the ultimate surprises that were packed in here. But I also thought that the business of holding it down to actually the rhetoric of performance was really interesting, very impressive.
Why was the only witness that was called Aaron?
We were going to do Lavinia, weren't we? As originally suggested.
We were the sign language.
Yeah, we were
she saw what, we thought about who saw what happened,
Yeah.
who would you actually call upon.
Yeah.
Obviously Bassianus is dead.
Yeah.
Lavinia, I kind of said, well, she does do the thing with the stick in the ground sand.
Yeah.
We could, maybe have a draw on the whiteboard or something, but I don't know why we decided not to in the end.
That would have been, I mean, there are all choices that you have to make, but I mean, that would have been an interesting choice. I'm just intrigued why Aaron, because Aaron stands out very much, particularly the way you played him as, the other, the outside of the foreigner. I mean, it's kind of related to what I was asking about Iago, what is he? What's he for? And why did you call him as a witness?
Well, it's a stage trial, so the only reliable witness for the Emperor and for Hortensius would be Aaron, because he's the only one that's willing to play game, really. And you see throughout the entire play, Aaron is pretty much the agent of the destruction that Tamara seeks. And so Aaron's got this brooding quality, he's got the ability to manipulate, and he will play along, because essentially it's his scheme that results in the two in the pit with Bassianus, and it's him that plants the bag, it's he that plants the letter. So it's all his doing.
Also, Aaron's an incredibly fun character to have. I think Aaron and Saturnius were the two that we spent a lot of time talking about how we were going to play them, because they're incredibly fun characters to play with. And also, he gives a lot of scope to the defence, because the whole defence was then based upon the fact that Aaron is a Moor. And I think if we didn't have Aaron, or had perhaps someone else, a Roman witness, we just wouldn't have had that. So I think it's valid in that respect.
And were you thinking about English law or Roman law when you made the appeal about the validity of the law?
I think.
Were you imitating Cook, or were you imitating Cicero?
I think you can imitate both, to be honest. I think. I don't know.
I think what we had is, in the back of our head, we had the Elizabethan sort of court, but we knew that in that court you would not have a defense in the treason trial. And so we went back to the Roman courts and we suggested that here's where we could take our defense from in order to, it's make it more abstract, but kind of add sort of weight to it. And seeing as Shakespeare does look back on Rome, from, as Paul said earlier, from the Elizabethan age, why don't we do the same?
Chris, at one point you had the line where, in which you delivered in a very appropriately imperious manner, "I am Rome." What are your thoughts on that in connection with the way that the Elizabethan polity developed?
That's a good question.
The idea of lex loquens, the speaking law.
Yeah, I don't know, I suppose that's sort of the, don't really know what to say, to be honest. I want to talk about separation of powers sort of thing. And kind of like me being all powers, I guess, I am Rome, I am the most powerful person, I control everything, I decide. And, what's the question again?
Well, what connection is there between that brazen statement, "I am Rome," and if any connection with the Elizabethan governing structure?
James, basically. We mentioned it while we were reading it and discussing it and writing it. But James the First, right? He had a really different view of the state, and his view of the state was the king above all. And as such, as he made clear, obviously, in his Court of Star Chamber speech in 1616, I believe. And what his whole idea was that it was the king above the state and above the law. And I think that's the parallel you can see here.
So is Shakespeare being prescient then?
And so are we.
I think.
No, I'm sort of a bit flippant, but there is a kind of serious note to that, which is were the seeds for that claim by James laid in the last decade of Elizabethan law?
Absolutely, because you have the succession crisis, and the whole model of government changes to suit that, because you have power factions vying for power, and government suddenly becomes sort of from the post-Spanish Wars into the 1590s, and very much this model of trying to consolidate power within one central body, and then that's something that's adopted by the early Stuart monarchs.
As you like the acts of supremacy, things like that.
And I want to ask you the same question that I asked the other group about whether this module has done anything for you that you would not have done elsewhere. Was there anything was there something that you were involved with here in this project that you would not have done elsewhere?
I think most of the projects. I think exactly. It doesn't take a genius to sit here and work out that this is slightly more fun than sitting in a lecture for 2 hours.
Well, you could have
or
said
sitting
it
in
was
a 3 hours.
purgatory, because I remember halfway through the first session, and you were all thinking, "How do I get out of this madhouse?" No. This is actually kind of, as it were, for the record, so that we can take the sound bite and say, look, this is what we're trying to do, and we have to keep trying to sell this method of teaching and learning to people who look at it from the outside, not having done it, who are very suspicious about it, so from your point of view.
I think today you saw. We all tried to do something new. Chris tried to ham it up a wee bit with his satirised performance, which
very successful.
Always going to camp.
New bride.
Which small camp, did you say?
No, it was, yeah. It was a bit outrageously.
But even yesterday, he wasn't massively comfortable in that persona, and I think he played it very well in the end. Aaron as well, doing his silly accent, and me prancing around like a bit of an imbecile, pretending to be Cicero.
I thought,
but it was all very hard-headed, as well. It was all grounded
Yeah.
in things that you had actually thought about seriously. It wasn't. This wasn't today we improvise. This was something that had, and for all of you, these were really seriously thought out projects that had a lot of substance to them, and then were informed by the idea of embodiment. So it was from our point of view, it was taking subject content and a really sophisticated embedding of subject content into what then you were creating out of that, making something new. So you took all the material, you created something new, and then on top of that creating something new that demonstrated a real expertise, a real sense of confidence in using very complicated materials, not just from the law, but from Shakespeare. You know, and all of that wiliness and canniness that you've all used in taking Shakespeare and weaving Shakespeare into your own text. And then on top of that, embodying all of that with an extraordinary amount, you know, of authority and expertise.
I don't know if you're aware of this, but for me, this also had a third level to it, which is contemporary playwrights. There was a kind of Stoppard-esque historicism about what you were doing.
Yeah.
I thought it was fascinating. I mean, I could see Sarah Kane in those.
Yeah, which is rather that's interesting because that's rather like in the play. I mean, he mixes up all those different versions of Rome that are taken from Livy and Plutarch and Virgil, but a kind of just it's his take, a historical take on
It's
Rome.
early modern, postmodern.
What you did brilliantly, I thought, was to you conveyed those images of law or absence of law with incredible imagination. I mean, as I said, the muteness of the people conveyed through those dolls, and then very, very moving. I thought, it always moves me. That wonderful scene where Titus is asking for justice in that scene, where every other word is hear or say and talk, and people aren't listening, and everyone walked out.
You know, give me my sons.
I had tears in my eyes when he did that. It was very, very moving.
Does anybody else want to say anything here now as kind of final wrap-up?
Could we just say on that point that we were pretty inspired by the Tamworth film that we all saw.
That's why I was going to be camp.
And that's sort of inspired the sort of ahistoricism of what we pursue.
Last comments? Anybody?
I shall never forget either the sight of Gareth in a plastic Roman soldier. Very good guard acting, Gareth.
They wrote the part of the thing that said, be big and moody.
Mean, moody and magnificent.
Typecasting. Anything that you think that we should sort of inform the law department about?
Well,
Should kind on us with their exam.
I wish the law department could see what you're doing. I really do.
It really should, because
it would be an eye-opener for
the
them.
teaching styles.
they might be confused.
They would definitely be confused, but they ought to see it.
I think the point is that in the early modern period, if we can take something from there, the whole idea of rhetoric and the acting and all that and moving and the physical presence of a lawyer being able to speak is lost entirely on us as we sit behind desks and write essays and exams on trusts and property and blah, 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 bury our heads in textbooks. And so this course is really something different that kind of harkens back to that.
How do you think a first year module would go down that required a couple of sessions where students all had to do this kind of work?
I think you would really surprise a lot of people.
Right.
And I'm not sure if it would be a bad thing.
Best in first year.
Yeah, best in first year.
Yeah, there would be some reluctance,
Sure.
but it's not. It's all about.
Do you think you would get mutiny?
No,
Moot
you love it.
I think you're almost in as a safer bet if you go for first years because you can pass it off as this is part of the course and you are doing it.
Well, would you all come back and be mentors for this? You know?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And if
you can come back for the day and be grown-ups and say,
if you
oh, we did that.
See, we've done this for chemistry, which might interest you. So the whole of their first year have been in here doing this kind of work.
Well, not this kind of work, but they did the periodic table.
Embodiment,
Yeah, they did the periodic table. They embodied the periodic table.
I think if you did it in multiple sessions, what you get in the first one was what we had when Carol said we're going on a bear hunt. You had no idea what we were doing. He was parading around the room in circles, looking at each other. And James, you get that, and then you get this sort of sort of enthusiasm build up as it did with us. And I think it'd be good.
Well, at least it sent you off into your other exams in a really good frame of mind. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.